Honestly, when I started this back in September, I thought I'd be standing here today giving you a technical breakdown of what actually goes into making sidewalks. I had this very step A to step B vision of how my life worked. My definition of success was so simple it was almost embarrassing to look back on. I thought, build a sidewalk between Park and Prescott. Get it done by April. In my head, it was going to be an easy yes. I had this mental image of town officials being thrilled that a student wanted to help. I figured I'd send one polite email, they'd send a permission slip, and we'd be digging dirt by November. So I waited. I checked my inbox every single morning like I was a kid waiting to open my presents on Christmas Day. I stayed polite, I stayed quiet, I stayed in my lane. And for 3 months, I got absolutely nowhere. I was learning my first lesson the hard way. The world doesn't move just because you're being a good student. While I was sitting in my room refreshing my email and waiting for permission, reality was happening out on the street. That intersection at Park and Prescott isn't just a line on a map to me anymore. I can hear the tires screeching there. In the last 6 months, we've had 2 accidents at the intersection. When you see the glass pavement and the flashing lights, the project stops being a requirement for a class. This shows how purely dangerous this intersection actually is. This was one of the main reasons for my project. Me staying quiet wasn't me being polite. I realized that if I stayed quiet, a third accident was inevitable. I stopped waiting for the inbox to ding, and I started making noise. I stopped asking for permission and started advocating for myself. That a 15-minute quick chat, I finally built the courage to email the TAC for. It turned into a formal presentation from the TAC committee. But I'm not going to stand here and pretend I was doing my work every single day. My path wasn't a straight line, and right as the project needed the most momentum, my life turned into a collision of schedules. It wasn't just one thing, it was hockey season. The 10 p.m. practices where I'm exhausted afterwards and have to get to bed. Then it was box lacrosse and hockey. Then it was indoor lacrosse. On the weekends, it was a cycle of late night practices, getting home physically exhausted, and then getting home and having to focus on other work for classes and push this one away. I hit a wall, hard. There were weeks where I didn't send a single email. There were moments where I let the project slip because honestly, I was just too tired to care about a sidewalk. I felt like I was failing, and the silence in my inbox felt like a lead in my chest. But I was a student following my schedule, but I wasn't a leader driving a project. That failure taught me something I've never learned before. It taught me what real responsibility actually feels like. I remember sitting at my kitchen table during one of those dark weeks. I was making every excuse in the book, the practices, the games, the exhaustion. I was waiting for someone to tell me it was okay to let it go. My dad didn't give me a pep talk. He didn't offer to jump in and save me. He just looked at me and said, "This is your project, not ours." That was a gut punch. It hurt to hear, but I needed it. This was the moment where the permission slip mentally died. I realized the gap between a student and being a citizen. When you're a student and you don't do the work, you get a bad grade. Whatever, you move on. But when you're a citizen and you don't do the work, the sidewalk doesn't get built. People stay at risk. The most insane part of all this data is looking at Park Avenue specifically. When I asked people if they actually walked there, 90% of the neighborhood said no. Just stop and think about that for a second. That is nearly 10 out of 10 people I talked to. They're avoiding one of the most important central roads in our entire town like it's some kind of restricted disaster site or some hazardous zone. It's not because people are lazy, and it's definitely not because they don't want to get outside. I already showed you that 100% of the neighborhood wants to be active. It's because Park Avenue, the area where the sidewalks are, is very dangerous. When 9 out of 10 neighbors tell you they don't even want to step foot on a major street, that's not just a suggestion or a polite request for a sidewalk, it's a warning. We've already seen 2 accidents there in the last 6 months alone. Those aren't just numbers on a police report, those are real people, real families, and real scares. The fact that 90% of people are staying away from the Park Avenue is showing that the community is literally terrified of that street. Nobody wants to gamble and put their life in jeopardy just to walk from point A to point B. Adding a sidewalk doesn't just add safety, it also adds accessibility. Right now, Cromwell is currently landlocked and there's no way to get to Morristown from walking safely. You would have to walk on the side of Park Avenue right now, and it is not in good shape. The township said they wanted to increase walkability, but without this sidewalk, residents are having to drive their cars to just get into Morristown to walk around when they don't want to walk in the neighborhood. The data also proves that this danger isn't just a rush hour problem or something that happens when school gets out and people are rushing home from work. It is a constant 24/7 threat that doesn't take a break. My survey showed that while a lot of people walk in the evening, we have all neighbors at all hours, morning, noon, and night. There is no safe on a road that doesn't have a sidewalk, period. Since Park Avenue doesn't have a protected path, every single person who tries to navigate it is taking a huge risk regardless of what time the sun is up. We need a path that works as hard as the people in this town do, and we need it before that luck runs out. But luck isn't a safety plan, it's not a solution either. So, if you go to Park in Prescott today, you aren't going to see a finished sidewalk yet. But for the first time in years, there's a plan that's actually moving. I'm walking away this year with more than a proposal. I'm walking away with the maturity to make my own mistakes and confidence to advocate for myself. Thank you.